words of affirmation, and quality time. After reading the book, I discovered that there's also a very helpful quiz you can find at the5lovelanguages.com that will give you your results in about 10 minutes. What I love about this concept is that it applies to all living things that are capable of affection. Dogs love to spend time with their owners. And I once had a cat that was constantly bringing me birds and mice. Granted, those are all things she liked. Even though these are simple enough concepts, I have found that sometimes I have trouble speaking the languages. Opening our hearts can be a difficult process. Here are some insights on what the cause might be. I sat down with 2 mental health professionals to see if they could shine a light on why it can be challenging to give and receive love. Before we share what they said, here's a little bit about who they are. First, we have somatic psychotherapist Mama Lisa. Here's what she said when we asked how she culturally defines herself.
Southern-born, Louisiana, a child of the slave trade, so of African descent. Sometimes I'll refer to myself as New African. I don't blink when someone refers to me as African American, and then I think most core to my identity is I walk through this world as a queer Black woman, as a song weaver and a priestess and a healer, a powerful healer. Both of those things call to me strongly. I know that my life is, and my hands and my heart are definitely in service to the divine feminine. I locate myself inside of supporting all things that help us reconnect to and realign with the divine feminine. Primarily, I move through the world as a community-based healer, predominantly as an emotional and spiritual midwife. I do a lot of work supporting the healing of trauma and transformation, supporting folks to be their best selves and their most embodied self inside of leadership and their purpose on this planet. I primarily do that work through my relationship with generative somatics. I have been a student on that path for a little over a decade and a teacher on that path for quite some time now, probably about 8 years. I began my journey in rape crisis work at San Francisco Women Against Rape, directing the counseling program there, and then fell across this body of work and just really appreciated the very direct in route of deeply being able to heal and transform trauma, which really appealed to me inside of that work and supporting survivors of sexual violence.
So what is this thing called somatics?
Somatics is fundamentally a path to transformation, is how we use it. The word soma, it's a Greek-based word in origin. That means the body in its living wholeness. So we're really looking at transformational work and healing work on the level of mind, body, spirit. I really look at this work as aligning our visions and our beliefs and the actions that we take, and all of those things lining up. Often we roll through the world with great ideas and these beautiful values and desires, and then the actions that we take on the day-to-day don't always reflect and mirror those visions and those values, because our actions often get shaped by other things beyond the things that we care about and are important to us, but we're also we're permeable creatures, and we are shaped by our families and our communities and our cultures, historical norms. And so looking at how we get shaped by things consciously and unconsciously, and then how to intentionally shape ourselves towards being our best selves, being a open, clean channel so that divine purpose, essence can flow through us.
Next, we asked her to share some of her thoughts and opinions on the 5 love languages.
I first fell upon this when I was living in New Mexico, more than maybe 15 years ago. It was like, oh, languages of love, that makes so much sense. We all have our different languages of love, and we could be trying to love on each other, and if we don't speak the same language of love, here I am doing these things that I think is what it means to love this person, and they're not able to receive it or feel it. It's not feelable love for them because their language that they speak and receive is different. And then also recognizing that we can show love in certain ways that aren't necessarily always the ways that we like to receive love. And how we show love, how much that gets shaped sometimes by our environment and how we grew up or the influences that were around us in our life journey.
Before the interview, we asked each of our therapists to take the quiz to see which of the 5 love languages stood out for them.
The 2 for me personally that were highest on the list were acts of service and physical touch. And physical touch did not surprise me. I know that that's something that's important to me. But the acts of service kind of surprised me to see that as coming out on top. And I think about our historical legacy, a shared legacy that comes out of the slave trade and our ancestors' experiences in slavery, and what service looked like. You were forced to serve and not dignified in the process, to stay and sustain love under the lash. Are there any cultural trends towards what comes out on top in languages of love? I think about some of those acts of service, especially for women, was the care of their children. The innocence of a babe, I could see. I have no arguments there about true, unconditional love being able to happen inside of those relationships. But where there is like a lack of dignity, I wonder if that was really love or something else. Something out of necessity that doesn't feel like the same place that love is born from.
Before we got to the next love language, I asked Mama Lisa to reflect on what might stop someone from being able to express love in a particular way.
We are shaped by the ways that we grow up, our intimate families, the families that we're raised with, and how we witnessed love being shown between those primary relationships, between mom and dad, between any siblings if you weren't an only child, between mom and your other siblings, and what you saw they got in attention and love and what you feel like you got in attention and love. Then when you go to school, that can really shape what we anticipate. And then you throw in traumatic moments of violation or assault that happens, and especially when the violence is directly upon your body in a sexualized way where you did not have agency over, and actually physical touch was a dangerous thing in that moment. Your body was the site of the violation, and then those things get coupled. And our bodies can generalize in unconscious ways. Here's touch. And if that sexual trauma has left its remnants, and then benign touch can trigger something else that has happened if you haven't worked through that or moved through that. It would make sense that someone is moving towards you as an expression of love in that way, and the very thing that they're moving towards to offer love is, I can't feel love in that way, back off me. For me personally, I have an interesting, subtle, automatic move away in my body upon physical contact. For me, that's probably the product of being beaten as a kid in the name of discipline and spare the rod, spoil the child. And so in my body, there have been moments, I have a god brother who's so dear to me, Brother Marcus, and I think this was the moment that this lesson really, I could feel it on such a deep level. But I was washing dishes at the sink. It was at a time when I think he was across the country with his parents and we haven't been in the same location in a while, and he was here visiting. So it was just like, oh, such a beautiful reunion and special time together. And he moved to make this loving touch in the middle of my back. And my instant instinct was to just flinch away from the touch. And oh my God, it broke my heart, because in me there is such a longing for physical affection. But what my body has learned is to flinch away from touch, born out of the physical abuse in the disguise of quote unquote discipline, the physical abuse that I received on that level. And that moment was like, I want his love so much. And then my body is like that moment of contact where my body flinches away. There was just something about that moment for me that was so disorganizing in a beautiful way, a really insightful way. It just has you really evaluate how the pressures of life can often have us adapt away from what our truest nature is.
Here on the ItCast, it is our mission to create safe audio space. Because we touch on a lot of sensitive subjects, we respect everyone's right to privacy. The following is an anonymous submission from a marriage and family therapist working in California.
I am a white Caucasian male, sexual preference straight, and I'm polyamorous, so I'm in open relationships, and I don't have a primary.
Next, we asked if he could tell us just a little bit about what polyamory means.
Polyamory is defined depending on what your background is and how you approach it. Some people consider it an excuse to just sleep around and have multiple partners. Other people joke that it's just people who are afraid of making commitments. Whereas for me, I am in a conscious, intentional relationship where my partner and I, we both are in open relationships, and we are private about those relationships to protect the other person. So what stays in one relationship doesn't also get involved with the other relationship. And it helps keep it clean and respectful. The word polyamorous could mean something to you very different than what it means to me. It's just like a quantifier to help people relate to, like, a way of life, your sexual preference, your sexual lifestyle.
Here's what happened when he took the quiz.
My primary is quality time. I scored the highest on the online quiz with quality time, and that doesn't surprise me because that is my go-to. It's just effortless to gravitate towards defining love reciprocity with how we are spending authentic, present, moment-to-moment time together. Yeah, I was surprised how many times they keep asking about gift giving in all the ways that we express gifts, whether it's through words, whether it's through material objects. And I was noticing how much of a visceral reaction I was having. I was very off-putting, like a lot of resistance towards that. And that also speaks to probably my upbringing and development. Oftentimes our wounds, our old hurts growing up, where we felt a denial of love. That's where, as adults, we tend to avoid those areas of receiving love because it's just too painful. It opens up our raw, vulnerable, exposed selves. And so we gravitate towards replacement love language, when actually what we really want is that form of love. But it became tainted. It became had a negative connotation associated with it, because every time you experience that love reciprocity, that form of language, love language, then it's like you siphon back to those feelings when you were young, where love was given in that way, but it actually meant harm. It was hurtful. Trauma can actually